So the Sony a6700 has probably been one of the better Sony releases in the recent years. Yes, they've put out a lot of cameras, but I think the a6700 was quite anticipated. It came out with a lot of new features, a lot of great new software things, and I think it's a great camera. But at the end of the day, I did sell my body, my Sony a6700 body. I did find some pros, some cons with the camera. What I'm gonna use for reference is an a6000, and I just want to go over all the little details I've never heard anyone talking about or complaining about. At the end of this video, I think people who are interested in this camera should have a pretty clear picture about if they want to invest in it or not, and maybe people who already own it should also have a better idea if they want to keep investing in that camera with accessories and lenses and everything, or they should maybe switch out to something else. So let's start out with the body of the camera itself. So the outside, the body was made out of magnesium, which is pretty strong. I haven't had any real problems with that, and it feels quite great in the hands. It's light, but it's durable. The grip was greatly improved with the bigger battery, the Z-type battery. And it did add some new dials. I really like the mode dial that they added for switching between photo and video. I do think that the S&Q mode, the slow motion mode, is quite useless for that dial. I would just like it to be photo and video, but it's not a big issue. Like the thing itself worked very well. Where I did have an issue was the SD card slot, and not the fact that there's only one SD card slot. Of course, that is a little bit of an issue, and I would like to see two cards, but I didn't really like the port quality, not the port quality, but the door quality of it. First of all, the door was quite basic. The locking mechanism I felt was really basic for what it was. But the biggest problem was the rubber gasket, or actually the lack of it. As I remember, it was sort of like a foamy, rubbery gasket. And that foam over time was prone to breaking. So mine, for example, my a6700, after like 6 months, you could see that the gasket was starting to chip a little bit, which is concerning given the fact that it's the only thing preventing water from coming in. Of course, the door itself also, but you know how it is. It would have been nice to just have a normal rubber gasket instead of some foamy stuff. And then I don't like the buttons that the camera used. All 6000 models have had the same buttons basically. Maybe they've improved them a little bit, but they're not the same buttons, at least from my experience of using stuff. They don't feel like the same buttons that I use on the full-frame cameras, and they just wear out faster. After only using the camera for a couple of months, I could feel that some of my buttons that I've used most frequently, of course, just started to feel mushy. They were not clicky, they were still responding, but you could really feel the difference when you were clicking them, which just drove my OCD like crazy. I think it's a simple fix from Sony's end to just improve the buttons, improve the build quality just a little bit more. I like that the camera had a flippy screen. That was great. The resolution was low, but it was usable. Problem I had was the eyepiece itself, where it was way too low resolution. I never ended up using it just because of that low resolution. So the eyepiece, quite useless. Otherwise, the body was great. I would have liked to see a joystick for more usability in photo and video stuff, but it was alright, like you get used to it. Then let's talk about the software. I think a6700 really shines in the software itself. The camera operates very fast, it's quick, it doesn't really have glitches or anything. The AI focusing works very well. I like that you can import your own video LUTs for video, for previewing. That's a great feature that even my A7S III doesn't have for some mystery reason. You get a lot of options, and I do recommend new people to just go over the manual and read all about the settings, because it does get quite confusing because there's so many options, but I like the fact that we have so many options. So it was great. You could really customize the camera to your liking. Now I want to talk a little bit about the price of the camera itself. Where does it fall in the price range category? A6700 was put in a weird place where it was in between the cheapest models and full-frame cameras. So if the full-frame cameras started at around $2,000 and the cheaper models ended at around $1,000, the ZV series for example, then that camera was right in the middle. It was 1500 as I remember. And I wouldn't say the camera is cheap. I hear a lot of people talking about the fact that it's a great entry point camera. I don't think it's really that good of an entry point camera because it is quite expensive, but you do get a lot of value, modern features, and a great overall camera for that price. So I think it is priced very well, but that also means that for just a bit more money, you could get a full frame camera. However, I would avoid doing that for a few reasons mostly. So APS-C also comes with smaller lenses, which I really want to emphasize because the camera is only as good as its lenses. And with Sony APS-C, you can use both full frame and APS-C lenses. Although I do think that full frame lenses, like using a full frame lens on an APS-C body is it defeats the whole purpose of the camera. I think they're way too big for such a small camera like that, but you can use it and it's great that, again, you get the feature. But APS-C lenses in general, especially what Sony is putting out, they're lightweight, they're small, they're high quality, they're great. And you also get them for way less money, which is mostly why you should consider that camera. A6700 is mostly targeted at beginners and intermediate level videographers and photographers, which is the right target audience, not only because of the features that the camera offers and the smaller sensor, but mainly because of the lenses. And I can't emphasize how good of a feeling it was to experiment with lenses when you first got into photography and videography. It just gives you a completely new perspective on things. And if you go full frame, the lenses get way more expensive. Most of the time it's 2 or 3 times as expensive compared to APS-C lenses. And I really like the fact that you can own multiple APS-C lenses, test everything out, get familiar with various angles, decide which is the right one for you, sell off the rest, or just keep it in your arsenal because it doesn't take a lot of space, it's not that expensive, and you can always put a few more lenses in your backpack because they're so lightweight compared to full frame stuff. Where APS-C lenses do fall off, in my opinion, are the quality. They're built usually very well. It really depends on the manufacturer and the lens you choose. The optical quality is lower compared to full frame. I would say it's the last 10-15% that they're not paying attention to. So most of the times you get a little bit more aberrations, a little bit more distortions in the lenses. I think where the distortion and problems come into play is if you're doing astrophotography or product shoots, where any sort of distortions can just lead on to like weird images and just a lot of post-production needing to be done to correct them. If you're not doing that, if you're doing casual portraits or event photography, videography, real estate, stuff like that, if the aberrations are not too crazy, it's absolutely fine. No one's gonna notice. Most of the time you can correct them. And yeah, it's just, you should know that there are some, let's say, quality control issues, or not issues, just optical stuff in general, that will come with smaller lenses. Which kind of leads me to my next point, is if you do high-end photography, and not even high-end photography, if you do think that you will do high-end photography, especially portraits and product shoots, or astrophotography, and something that involves capturing precisely a large amount of details, then you should go full frame. You should invest in a great full frame camera for photos. Maybe that's the A7 III, A7 IV. I would not look at the A7C models really for that. You should invest in that and a really good prime lens. And that's it. That's mostly it. You'll be good to go. At that field, the tiny details really do matter. For most other things, they don't. And if you're not really that experienced, you will never notice them, and neither will the clients. What does all that mean? What does it mean for you specifically? Maybe you're a beginner, maybe you're an intermediate, maybe you're a professional looking at this video, thinking it's a fun camera to use. Let's actually talk a little bit about the fun part. I used it and I thought it was a lot of fun. One thing is that it's so small with all the lenses. As I said, you can just throw that camera in your backpack, you won't even feel it, throw in a couple of lenses and just have fun with it. It's a great small camera to just have fun with. You can put it in various places because it is so small. It's very discreet, so people don't really pay attention to you and don't look at you weirdly if you're shooting in public or shooting events or doing all kinds of stuff. It doesn't drag attention, which is great. You can fit it into tight spaces, which led me to getting some just fun shots in general. So it is a fun camera to use, and if you're a professional looking for something a little bit more fun, it's a very powerful camera to do so. Where does that leave the beginners and intermediates? I think if you're a videographer just looking for a great overall camera, it is something you should consider. Yes, there's the FX30, which I also very much recommend. Haven't had time to use it myself, but due to the improvements in the build quality, I think it's mostly a better choice. But if you want to do a little bit of hybrid shooting, like that's the camera. Mainly because it's small, it offers a bunch of features. It's great. It has dual native ISO, log shooting, LUTs, and all the little things you would want apart from shutter angle. So where does that leave photographers? If you're already a photographer looking into investing into a new camera or system or body or looking for something fun, I would recommend Fullframe. It not only gives you more detailed shots optically, but you just have way more data to work with in the files themselves. You have more light going into the sensor, which of course is better, but it's mainly in the post-processing where you can push the shadows more than you would on APS-C. Yes, the lenses are more expensive, but you could get a zoom lens. Your camera can handle better low light scenarios, and it's better with noise and all these little things. I think photographers who are already a little bit established with photography should go full frame. But if you're really a beginner and you're more into travel stuff, family stuff, street photography, where you need a discrete camera, you don't want anything big, maybe you want to test stuff around, you just want something with you to take along, I would recommend the a6700. It does offer a lot of good features, especially the AI autofocus. I wouldn't say it's the best for portraits, but you can still do portraits. The Viltrox makes like a 75mm f1.2. That's a great camera for all this. So yeah, I recommend it to videographers, almost any videographer at any skill level. It's a pretty future-proof camera for now, and yeah, it will serve you well if you take care of it. I do want to emphasize taking care of it because of those buttons and that SD card slot. So be careful with it. Don't put it in too much adventurous situations. Here also I can show you, like this is, of course this is a bit extreme, they're not the same lenses, but this is an APS-C lens, you can see how small that is, and this is a full frame lens. Yes, this is a prime, they're not the same level lenses, but this is just beefy and heavy, and this is, you don't even feel it. And that's how it is in most cases. Anyways, I've rambled for enough. I like the a6700. If I was thrown into the situation I was when I bought it, with all this knowledge that I know now, would I still buy it again? Probably yes. It was such a fun camera to use, but I did need a different camera for the stuff that I do, so I did end up selling it just so I could afford a better one. That was my situation. Hopefully this video cleared something up for you. Maybe you learned something new, maybe gave you some clearance and some insight into how it was using the a6700. If it did, click the buttons down below, maybe leave a comment if you've got more questions. I would love to answer them, and yeah, I hope to see you in the next video soon. Yeah, let's just say soon.